we're developing our strategy for 2022. What's important to me? Net income, appreciation, tax savings. I'm sure many of you are saying, hey, all three are important, of course. Let's fixate on one. And now the question is, well, how do you get more of that? Hi, this is Chris German, the Apartment Dealer. Welcome back to the Apartment Dealer Show. And today we're going to pick up our discussion on what are the things we need to consider as we develop our investment strategy in multifamily properties for 2022. Now, for a quick review, what did we learn in our last video? Well, there's three main things to keep in mind. Number one, 1/3 of all the money that was invested in commercial properties last year was invested in the type of properties you own, type of properties that I own. That's multifamily real estate. That should make you feel good about your investment choice. Again, 1/3 of all the money, people are buying multifamily properties. Second, last year, 2021, posted the highest increase in rental rates ever in history on an average of 11% for the nation at large. Close to home, some areas like the Inland Empire saw an increase of 14% when it came to rental increases. So last year, needless to say, was a very good year for rental increases. And this year looks to be a 7% increase, which would be the second highest increase that we've seen ever historically for rental increases, right? So that's a good thing for us landlords. And then third, vacancy rates. Vacancy rates have continued to decline beginning in 2020 to where they're basically a bare minimum today, and they're going to continue sliding towards zero. All of which means that if your places are not already full, if you happen to come across a vacancy and you own investment real estate here in Southern California, you'll be able to fill that unit in short order. And not only just fill the unit, but assuming you have a good unit in terms of the quality, you'll be able to obtain above market rental rates. So the major factors that you would look for when you're contemplating a multifamily investment, everything is in your favor as a landlord. Let's keep that in mind. One other item that I failed to mention in the last video is the affordability issue. When you look at the affordability index, right, how affordable is single family home ownership? With the run-up in prices and here soon to be the run-up in interest rates, homes become more and more unaffordable. Now, I believe in the American dream, right? I wish that all individuals could have the pride of home ownership. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be the case. And so as affordability gets pushed further and further out of reach, that makes more individual tenants. So we're going to continue to see two competing things here, right? Supply and demand. There's simply not enough units to house the amount of tenants that are available in the marketplace. And again, LA County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, Riverside County, right here local. And that's another reason why we see a run up in the rental rates, why we feel good about multifamily as we start out this year. So as we're strategizing, okay, what is it that I should do to better my situation, right? If I asked you the question, given your real estate portfolio, what one or two things should you change to make your portfolio more ideal? How would you answer that question? Now, typically for our clients, they say they own multifamily properties for one of three reasons, right? So they deal with the management, the risk, calls sometimes in the middle of the night, some of the things that we would perceive as the negative side of multifamily ownership. They deal with all that because cash flow, right? They enjoy the net income that their properties kick off. Two, appreciation. Properties here in Southern California just keep going up and up and up. Now, think about when you bought your investment property. Maybe just before during, or after you close escrow, there was some sort of economic calamity. But since then, what's been the predictable trajectory of multifamily values? They continue to go up. So we enjoy the appreciation. And then third, tax write-offs. What other type of investment can you purchase where not only can you sell the asset, take your winnings, move it into a larger asset, and essentially pay no taxes along the way, but as you improve the asset, capital expenditures, capital improvements, those items become tax write-offs, further sheltering your income. So those are typically the three reasons our clients would say, or the three major reasons why they would say they've invested in multifamily. So then the question begs, how do you get more of all three? That's what we should be asking ourselves as we strategize for 2022. Now, all this falls under the overarching principle that I like to think of, where those of us who own multifamily investment real estate, we're building a financial legacy, right? And what a great vehicle that tenants pay down our mortgages, pay our utilities, pay us net income, and help us build the financial legacy for ourselves and for our heirs. That's what we're doing here. Now, this financial legacy hinges on three pillars. And if you're familiar with some of my previous videos, you've been to one of our educational events, you've watched our educational webinars, I've discussed these three pillars at length. But for those of you hearing it for the first time, or if we need a quick review, let's run through it real quick here. So pillar one. Pillar one is maximization. Maximizing the properties we currently own by investing, doing capital improvements so that we can beautify the property, beautify the units, not for the sake of just making them look pretty, right? But so that we can raise rents, we can get higher rents for our property, which then builds the value from within. And by doing so, now we've set ourselves up for one of two options. One, we can do a cash out refinance, right? We can take some of that equity to continue and buy another investment property, or like most investors choose to do, we've built the value up, now we sell, take our winnings and roll it into an asset that would create more income for ourselves, and that goes into a pillar two, which is growth. So when we're talking about growth, okay, initially we're talking about an increase in our net income, okay? So let's say you own a 6-unit property. You sell that 6-unit property, take your equity, invest it in a 10-unit property, right? So you have that initial uptick in net income. Aside of that, because you've added 4 additional units to your portfolio, you're starting out, let's say on average, 15% above what you currently were collecting net income. Let's just use that as a conservative number. So on this new 10-unit property, you're collecting 15% more net income, okay? Maybe said differently, for every $1,000 you used to collect, now you're collecting $1,150, okay? Well, that's where we start. But year after year, as we raise rents, not on 6 units, but now on 10, those 4 additional units, now the rental increases exponentially grow, and we get to enjoy the compound effects as our income increases and as the property value increases. By having those 4 additional units, and we give those 4 additional units rental increases, the overall value of our money, of our equity, grows at a faster rate than if we were just to hang on to the 6 unit. Okay, that's pillar 2. Pillar 3, we have coined as preparing for tomorrow. And when we're preparing for tomorrow, we have one of 2 individuals in mind, either ourselves or our heirs. Now, let's talk about those of you that are planning for your heirs. It, I think, goes without saying, your heirs, your children, are going to need more money in their lifetime than you've needed in yours to be able to create the same standard of living, especially when you look at what's taking place with, say, inflation today, right? So they're going to need more money in their lifetime. So as you're in this third pillar, you may be in the last phase of your investment life. But if in fact you want to, your ideal strategy here is to set up your heirs to win in the future, then any growth that you would have of your property means that it would be that much more income for them in the future. Now, some of you may be thinking of giving your properties to your heirs just because you don't want to deal with Uncle Sam. Some of you have owned your properties for so long that if you were to sell today, you would pay Uncle Sam 40, 50% of your hard-earned equity. You cannot just swallow that, and rightfully so. And so it's not so much that you want to give Junior the building, but it's more so that you don't want to, you just don't want to give away that much equity, right? God bless America. You love your country, but you don't want to give them 50% of your equity, and I totally appreciate that. So now we're considering our financial future at this point, right? So okay, I'd like to sell. I really would like to, but I just grit my teeth and deal with the day-to-day, and when I'm on vacation, I get these calls about repairs. I'm having to deal with this, and sometimes I even feel guilty taking some personal time because after all, I got to look after my properties. You're right. Some of you might be in this situation. But you don't want to pay capital gains. You want to give the building to Junior because Junior won't pay any capital gains. But ideally, you'd like to sell. So what options are there to exit? And this is something to contemplate in Pillar 3 because there are options available which you would pay no capital gains or very little, and you would still have monthly cash flow. So, all right, back to where we started. We're developing our strategy for 2022. What's important to me? Net income, appreciation, tax savings. I'm sure many of you are saying, hey, all three are important, of course. Let's fixate on one. And now the question is, well, how do you get more of that? Whatever your answer is to your question of what's most meaningful to you, cash flow, tax savings, appreciation, how do you get more? That needs to lead the way in terms of when you're determining, do I buy, sell, or hold this year? And as a part of that decision-making process, what pillar am I in of this financial legacy? Or maybe said better, what pillar should you be in? And this really gives us all the food we need for thought to say, okay, I'm ready to take my next move. So let's talk about that now. Buy, sell, or hold. Okay, first let's consider holding. Maybe because there's something we see in the market, we're a little apprehensive given some of the misinformation that's out there. We've decided, you know what, it's just safer to hold. Now, legitimately, for some of you, it is better to just hold. Maybe given your age or other personal circumstances, holding would be the right prescription. But for the rest of you, let's consider, well, what are the negative aspects in terms of holding out of safety? I think of one of my mentors told me, well, Chris, if you just want safety, well, here's what we can do for you. We can put you in the corner and we can cover you with a blanket and we can bring you 3 meals a day. You'd be safe, but is that actually living, right? So when we're talking about our investments, and again, our overarching goal of building our financial legacy, does holding get us to where we ideally would like to be? So let's consider this. When we hold, what's happening? Well, our depreciation is declining, right? We're losing depreciation. So that means your income year after year has that much more tax exposure. And especially for those of you that have owned for 20, 25 years and so forth, you're basically out of depreciation, a lot of tax exposure. Now, the other component we have to consider is you're holding, and if you have a mortgage, well, your fixed rate, the clock's ticking, right? The clock's ticking. These commercial loans are only fixed for so long. On the previous video, we already discussed that interest rates are going up, right? 3 times this year. And not that the commercial mortgage rates are directly tied to the Fed rate. I get that, right? We have what happens with the stock market and bond market and so forth. But best guess is interest rates are going up. And so what does that mean for those of us who maybe have our rate lock is soon coming due? Okay. Then we have the rent control piece, right? So basically, your destiny has been chosen for you, right? If your tenants stay put, they're nice and cozy, they've got low rents, they're not going anywhere. What does that mean for you? So year after year, your destiny has been chosen for you. You're only going to grow incrementally. And for those of you that unfortunately caught got caught flat-footed with the passage of statewide rent control, you're growing at very small increments. And even like a year like this year, where I assume when we get the new CPI reading, it's going to be very high given what's taking place over the last year with inflation. If your rents are really low, right, you're not getting very far very fast. So these are some of the negative aspects. So what would be the antidote, if you will, to some of this? Well, when we're talking about depreciation, okay, we need some type of additional tax shelter, okay? Typically, that's going to consist of additional real estate, right? I just got done explaining that through a 1031 exchange, you're moving up in the size of property, which typically means you're moving up in price point, which means it gives you that much more depreciation. But nonetheless, we need some sort of tax shelter, especially for those of you where not only is your depreciation dwindling, but your mortgage balance is almost near nothing. So now you have no interest from a loan to write off, you have no depreciation, Uncle Sam loves you, you're his favorite child because you have all this tax shelter to deal with, right? So we need something to shelter our taxes. That points us in the direction of, well, we transact, we need to own more real estate. Second, when we come to the fixed rate component of this, well, do we need to refinance? That's a consideration. If this property maybe is still in pillar one, right? You're still trying to maximize this current property. Yet, when you purchased it, it was a 5-year fixed loan. Well, then we need to consider, hey, maybe we need to refinance at this point. And then the rent control piece. The real antidote to rent control is going to be growth. Okay. Again, as I just got saying, unless you want your financial destiny chosen for you by others. But when it comes to rent control, the reason why I say growth is the antidote is because if it's 5% base plus CPI, okay, yet through a 1031 exchange, okay, take your equity, roll it into something slightly larger. And I'm not suggesting you sell a 5-unit and buy a 20-unit, right? Where you feel like, gosh, it's going to be more work, more headaches, debt, the size of debt that you're uncomfortable with. That's not what we're suggesting here. But you definitely could go from 5 to 8 units or 8 to 12, this sort of scenario. And through that process, okay, we're growing our income, we're growing our tax savings, and more importantly, we're leapfrogging over rent control, right? In one swift move, by moving from our current property to the new property, we're increasing our net income, and then every year after that, as we raise rents, which will be subject to rent control, of course, but you'll be growing at a much faster rate than if we were just to stand pat. Now, I realize for some of you, when you hear this term grow or you hear the term sell, right away it has a negative connotation for you because you might be thinking, well, if I sell, my poor tenants, what's the new owner going to do with them? Or if I sell, no one else takes care of their properties like I do. So whatever I buy, it's going to feel like starting over because I'm going to have all these repairs that I'm going to have to invest in. Or, you know what, there's no other tenants like mine because I choose the best tenants, and maybe you do. And everybody else, they don't know how, who to rent to, and you're just going to be taking over somebody else's headaches. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I understand where those thoughts come from, but the bottom line is, if you're selling 5 to buy 8, well, the person selling 8 who has the same aspirations of you and for all the same reasons, that person selling 8 to go buy 12, an individual that's selling 12 is maybe going to go buy 18. More landlords than you think run their properties just as good, sometimes even better, right? Even better, even as much improvements as you've seen me do to my properties on our videos. Hey, there's better product out there. And there's an opportunity, I guess is what I'm getting at here. Okay, so that's our whole. All right, now let's consider buy. Now let's consider a purchase. Okay. The issues you may see with this are, Chris, what about the issue of low inventory? Chris, what about the competition that's in the market, right? And maybe for some of you, yes, Chris, I'd like to own more real estate, but where do I get the money?